Welcome back to the Philadelphia Flyers post-game, post-season show. Shutey, a rough one today for the Flyers. Unfortunately, here on home ice, they fall to the Jersey Hitmen by a final of 8-1. But let's go back over the course of this season. But 8-2. Sorry, I did forget about that additional goal at the end there. Let's go back and recap the season. Let's start with, let's go backwards from present. Talk about this team, because it was something that you brought up in the post-game show on air on Hockey TV. Talk about this team as it is right now, this group of 20 guys.
Yeah, I really like this team. I really like what I'm seeing from this group, and that always happens.
I know.
So we're doing it live. We've got to keep going. So I really like this group, and the additions of some of these players that are coming in, like Vadim Vezyankin, Reed Bibb. I mean, 2 of the 3 guys are on your top line that were not here at the beginning of the season, and a guy like Sam Nodicho, obviously he was out today, unfortunately, but even he's done a lot for that line as well, and it's amazing. It almost defies the laws of physics or maybe not physics, but definitely chemistry, because you're just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff together, and somehow it's like throwing a bunch of stuff from your trash, and all of a sudden you put it in the oven, and a home cooked meal comes out, and it's prime rib. I mean, this team is just, there's something else. The perseverance and just the new guys who keep coming in, and everything just keeps working out. They seem to be much more competitive now with this group than they ever were at all this season.
Yeah, it's like a beef stew of a hockey team, essentially.
Sure.
Throwing so much stuff in. There have been so many guys coming and going. One of the things that we were talking about before we started the video was, of the current roster, only 12 guys are on the team. That include, 12 guys, skaters plus Matt Beck. Talk about, because you mentioned it earlier, you talked about the turnover from, this is something you're not used to because you've been here since day one. Talk about what that's like to essentially end a season with only 12 guys out of the 20 that you started with. Yeah,
it's very foreign to me. We've been a very good team in the standings all 3 years up until this year. We're down a little bit, but like we've said, this team really is turning things around, and since the turn of the 2017 on your calendar, this team's been a boatload of fun to watch and is reminiscent of the old days. But yeah, we would, typically we would see some guys come and go, as you do. I mean, that's hockey, and especially at this level, there's guys that are here today and gone tomorrow, which, funny story real fast I'll get in. I witnessed that the first weekend we were ever here. South Shore Kings picked up a kid. He started Saturday night. We put a lot of pucks past that kid. That kid was gone on Sunday morning. So you see that stuff all the time in this league. And, it's very foreign to me. We've always had a core of kids that pretty much carried the team all the way to the end. And you would get a guy here and a guy there, it'd be a nice pickup. But we're looking at wholesale changes with this team.
It's so true. I think back to the first day, I was here for Media Day back in September, whatever it was, September 6th or 7th, right in this room. And I look around, I think about looking around that room, I think of guys that were here that, I was introduced to and talked to that haven't been here since like October.
Yeah.
They were gone. That's the amazing thing about junior hockey, is how fast guys can come and go.
It is. I mean, you just never know. I mean, one on the end. I remember right here, we're looking at Nick Polsinelli doing interviews before the season. Nick's been gone now for a couple weeks, and Nick's a top player in this league, and you would think that a subtraction of a kid of Nick Polsinelli's caliber, that this team would have went the wrong direction. But no, we're right here with. Well, we have 5 games left to go. We have a chance to have a play-in game right here in this building.
It's something definitely, too. You mentioned that play-in game. I had the chance to talk to Matt Beck before we came upstairs here, and he was really nice, pulled me aside, shook my hand, and said, thanks for everything. Thanks for everything. We really appreciate it. And he seems pretty confident. This team seems very confident that they could have that play-in game in 2 weeks, which is awesome to hear from this team.
Yes, Matt, class act. He's a great kid, and he's a heck of a goaltender, too, and he will be taking his talents to up north to Vermont, and he's got himself a nice little D1 gig going for himself next year, but I'm sure he wants to finish strong here while he still has his last year of junior eligibility. But Matt's a great kid, and one thing that you had told me that he did discuss with you, and we'll take a look at it right now as I have on this somewhere around here, are the end of our schedule. I mean, we have teams we can compete against. Now, I don't have PAL's schedule in front of me, but theirs isn't as favorable as the Flyers. We've competed very well with Connecticut all year. We've actually had some good competitive games with the Junior Bruins as well as Islanders Hockey Club, and you have South Shore sandwiched there in the middle of the last 3 games. So I'm looking, and I see a couple wins here where it might be tough for Pal to put any points together at the end of the year. So a win or a regulation tie, we could be here just from something that simple. So stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, it would be cool to get to host like you said, a postseason game. It's important to note, too, you mentioned the final end of the schedule. Despite South Shore's rankings, South Shore has been kind of middle of the pack all year. The Flyers have picked up 2 wins against them.
Sure.
So it's clearly a team that they can very easily beat. The Flyers, unfortunately, their number seems to be had by the Islanders Hockey Club. But you know what? There's a first time for everything, and it would be nice to pick up 2 points in that game. But that Connecticut weekend is going to be huge because that's a Connecticut team we've already seen here 3 times this year. That weekend could be the weekend where if you could get 3 or 4 points, you could really pull ahead of Pal and pretty much make it impossible for them to do anything.
Sure, and one thing I would like to say about Connecticut is that club has come a long way. I would like to really praise those guys over there. Marco's done a great job with that group. I believe Marco's been around now for at least 3 years with them. But when they first came into this league, they were having a real hard time competing. They've rebranded their name a little bit. They were once the Yankees, now they're the Junior Rangers. And things have just gone real well for them. But, yeah, that is still a team. I gave them their props, but that's still a team that the Flyers junior team can definitely compete with. And I think that's going to be a big weekend series coming up.
It definitely will be. And, I think it would be one of the cool things about hosting a postseason game here was, well, first off, we'd be able to do this again.
Sure.
But it would be cool to talk postseason because, if it's a play-in game, you win that game, you go on. And it would be cool, I think, to see this team win that get to that play-in game, have it here, win it, and then be able to say, hey, we're in the postseason now, which something that I'm sure this team just a couple weeks ago, even I don't think would have said something like that would have happened.
Sure, and I think the kids are believing it.
Yeah.
They're believing it in that room. Well, we've had our post-game pressers, coming off of a victory. You see how happy these kids are when they win. I mean, honestly, it's a shame. They were few and far between, but we did rack up we got a big 13 now on the win column right here. Instead of the single digits, we just kept staring at. And, these kids were giving it all they had. Things just weren't working. I don't know how this is working with just, as we've said, it's just a bunch of new kids just throw them all together and whip it all up, and boom, we have a competitive team here. And, the look on their faces after they win, is great. And I think that the happiness that you're seeing is turning into belief, and I think these kids believe they can really beat anybody at this point.
One of the things we talked about before we started the video was the roster as is, and some of the guys that are moving on. We'll get to that in a minute, but Shutey, real quick, let's go over the season so far.
Sure.
And we won't go down. We have it here in front of us, but instead of going down it and going over every win, because I don't remember everything, and I'm sure. You may have a better memory than I do. That is true. Shutey does, but pick out for you, and I'll go over too, but for you, pick out some of your highlights from the 14 home games we had this year, going as far back as you want.
You know what? I don't think I have to go back that far, and I'll just go
right here.
I'll go right here. January 21st and 22nd against the Okanagan Eagles was the team's first sweep of the season at home, and just what we saw was just incredible hockey from both teams. Nobody, I'm telling you, I said this a million times, I said it on the record, if you walked into this rink that weekend and saw Sunday's game, more so than Saturday was kind of a weird game where the Flyers ended up just finding a way to win.
Yeah.
But Sunday's game was just unreal that I'm telling you might have thought that something was seriously on the line of postseason stakes. And those two teams just absolutely gave it their all. Up and down, back and forth. The speed was incredible of the games. The gameplay was just outstanding. Both teams making plays. And just the line of Bibb, Vazyankin, and Nardicio that weekend, all the points that they put up between those two games was just absolutely unreal. And I don't know if that's anything that I've seen in all 4 years I've been here to see a line that crazy productive in points in 2 games.
Yeah, I think Vadim Vazyankin had 5 points. I think Reed Bibb had 4. When a line puts together 10 or 11 points in a weekend, some teams don't get 11 or 10 points in a weekend in terms of, overall. That was definitely huge. For me, Shute, and, Jerry asked me earlier what was one of my highlights of the year. I said Okanagan just because of how fun a weekend it was. But one of the other highlights for me was, I think that first weekend with the Jersey Hitmen was awesome. Despite the fact that the Flyers really didn't... I saw your reaction, Jerry. Despite the fact that the Flyers only...
What?
Despite the fact that the Flyers only earned 1 point, this was my first year here, and I really got to see a taste of that rivalry and how that game on Sunday that went into overtime, both teams wanted that game. Talk about that weekend series from what you saw, because for me, that's one of my highlights, because, we saw it today. These two teams really don't like each other.
No, they don't at all, and it's been that way from day one. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's just because proximity of where these two teams are located, but whatever the deal is, because obviously we were a brand new team 4 years ago, so I don't know where any bad blood could have ever have been stewed up in the first place. But it's been that way, and I hate to say this, but unfortunately Jersey has beat us way more than we've beaten them. And I don't know if that's really been the cause of it, but, we've had some of our really, really good teams over the 4 years still just get bashed by this Jersey team. And I think it might be a little bit of maybe we're a little jealous because we haven't quite caught up to them quite yet. We did go toe-to-toe to them in a Deneen Cup final. Unfortunately, they ended up on the higher end of it. And we did beat them pretty good one game at home there that year. But for the most part, it just seems like they really always have our number. But this year, that was a very competitive weekend, especially the game going to overtime. And I think that said a lot back then, because that was when this Flyers team was really struggling. So I'm a little surprised of how the outcome of this game ended up being this afternoon, especially since they just beat them a couple weeks ago, in the overtime with Tristan Ramage coming up with a huge goal with just 21 seconds to play.
Yeah, that was definitely a big weekend a couple weeks ago for this team. Shute, like I said, we could talk about it. I guess we can move on to it now. There's a number of players. I don't have the exact total, but this team is going to have, in terms of future of this team, we can't necessarily speak on it because we don't know. As I said on air, we'll keep you updated through our social media pages and our website. But this team next year, let's say next year.
As far as the rules of eligibility go.
Yes, as far as the way eligibility, we're not totally sure. I'm not even totally sure how junior eligibility works. But this team is going to have quite some turnover. Talk about the players going out and talk about the players staying here. What could the makeup of this team be like next year?
Yeah, I mean, from what I believe that we calculated, if you're going over some of these guys, it's going to be nice to have a J.R. Barone back next year. With this team staying, if the team can stay together. He's third on the team in points. He's out right now due to injury, but J.R. Barone, his goal scoring is a little down, but he just knows how to set his teammates up, and that's his MO. He's going to be the setter. So maybe a guy like a Mario Trepe or a Jeff Epwright can benefit from that. With being set up and being able to finish for Barone.
You've talked a lot about this year, Vadim Vazhankin. You talked about him earlier. He and Reed Bibb, and even the line today, Brusco, Vazhankin, and Bibb are all going to age out. Talk about how this team is going to have to, those two, you talked about it a couple weeks ago, how they were with Okanagan. What is the team going to have to do losing guys who are like such high point scorers?
Yeah, that's where it's going to get tough, and that's where you got to really, really dig deep into your recruiting, and hopefully you can just pull a couple really young kids, or maybe you'll be lucky enough to catch somebody that's a pretty good player but might be a little unhappy where they're at now and kind of lure them over there. That happens all the time. Let's be real about it. Sometimes it's a dirty business out there with the politics of this game, but that stuff does happen, and maybe hopefully maybe the Flyers team could be a beneficiary of somebody maybe sneaking away from being unhappy, and whatever you got to do to retool is what you got to do to retool. But personally, the right thing to do is let's go recruit some good young talent and bring them in, and they'll be the next generation.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Another player that we've talked about a lot this year, Shute, before we kind of start wrapping things up, and we even said it off air, Tristan Ramage has been on this team for quite some time. Unfortunately, he has aged out at this point. What have you seen from him, and what are you looking forward to seeing from him in the future as he moves on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what's in store for Tristan in the future, but I know a kid with a big body like that, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep a puck from going in his team's net, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep a guy from getting anywhere near his net. He will be physical. He will put you into the boards. He might do some things that aren't exactly legal in the rule book, but that's Tristan. He's willing to do whatever it takes to stop the opposition, and he doesn't care what he has to do.
Yeah.
And going along with that, I know these guys aren't partners, and I know this fine gentleman actually played some forward today, and that's Rich Brusco.
Yep.
Rich Brusco and Tristan Ramage, even though they're not a pair together, they kind of remind me of the two kids that are on this defensive back end that are like, the Keiths and Seabrooks of this team.
Mm-hmm. Very true. One of the things that we also did talk about finally before we get to the future, the last couple games of the season, the Flyers do, well, in terms of eligibility and age-wise, they retain Adam Mercer despite losing Matt Beck. How big would it be to see Adam return to this lineup next year?
Oh, that would be huge. I mean, when you know going into the next year that you have a spot that you pretty much believe is filled, that's a huge headache that is relieved. I mean, that is Adam Mercer. Especially
on a goal, especially on the back end.
Yeah, Adam Mercer is Tylenol. I mean, he absolutely is Tylenol. He is no headaches to whatever's going to happen for next year. I mean, you have at least one kid that you can put out there every other day, if not every day, and someone else will come along and maybe give him some healthy competition. We've had some good goaltending come through here, and we've had some healthy goaltending competition. But there is only one net, and only one kid can play at a time. But that is a huge leg up to already have Adam Mercer eligible to come back for this team.
Yeah, definitely. Shutey, we've talked about the far future. Let's talk about the immediate future here to wrap up. One final thought from you. What do you want to see from this team as it is now, the last 5 games, to hopefully get back here?
Yeah, the last 5 games, I'm going to flip around. We know Connecticut's a 2-gamer, so I got Connecticut on top here, so I know it's 2 games. I can count 1, 2. All right. So anyway, I mean that's definitely a series where I can see 2 or 3 points coming from that. Junior Bruins, always a tough game, especially you got to go there. I mean, from the looks, this looks like this is going to be a showcase since they're playing 3 different teams in 3 different days at the same rink.
One final showcase.
So it'll be the final showcase of the year.
Foxborough, yes.
So yeah, I mean, and that's these are all games where they can get points. I know Islanders Hockey Club has been a real thorn in the side, but South Shore has been a team where the Flyers have been able to get some points from. So I'm thinking you get somewhere between 3 to 6 points out of this stretch. You're here. You're absolutely here to play in.
Yeah. To
go to the quarterfinals. You're right here, and that's something that's very obtainable, and that's something I would like to see. And I you know what? I'm going to predict. I think it's going to happen.
I think it will too, and obviously we've talked about how huge it would be for this team to not have to travel. They've traveled so much this year. It would be huge to not have to travel for that one game.
Sure, and we did mention this a little bit. They are very far behind that 8 ball when it comes to traveling.
Yes.
I mean, it's brutal for them. I mean, but you know what? If you want to play in this league, it's just stuff that you're going to have to deal with. And unfortunately, we're located down in the South Jersey area, and we have a great handful of our teams are in the Massachusetts area, and we have some teams that are further up north into New York, and then you have the Jersey Hitmen. But you want to play this high level of hockey, and this club is willing to take you on, and you want to play for this club, and you want to commit, this is what you have to do. I mean, unfortunately, it is a little hard on these guys, but gotta do what you gotta do.
Without a doubt. Shutey, it's been an extreme pleasure. Thank you so much for doing
Thank
this.
you.
Thank you. It's been awesome. And hopefully we'll see you here for a playing game.
All right.
It'll be nice. All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in all year, and we hope to see you sometime down the road.